So I have a question for you. Would you rather get a skilled worker visa for 3 years and be tied to your job, or get a different visa which sponsors you for 2 years but does not force you to work for that job for more than 6 months? What's your choice? Oh, and did I mention with the second visa you can still continue living in the UK? Now, if it is the latter, that's absolutely brilliant, because in today's video I've got all of the details you need to know on the scale-up visa. In the 2021 Khalifa review of UK FinTech, the co-founder of the Scale-Up Institute, Sherry Kotu, said that foreign talent represents more than 40% of the people employed in the UK FinTech industry. In order to remain a global leader in FinTech, the UK needs to strengthen its position on immigration or risk a significant shortage in human capital. We found that 85% of FinTech startups and scaling firms were willing to relocate outside of the UK in order to get talent. These organizations that are creating jobs and stimulating economic growth. So the scale-up visa is vital to help them bring in the necessary scale-up talent, but also to stop these companies re-domiciling to places where it's easier to get that talent. Today, collectively scale-ups employ 3.2 million people, with those scaling up by employment having 1.7 million staff. And they have a strong appetite for additional talent. What is the kind of talent these scale-up visas are looking to hire for? Well, it's a really long list, but some of the roles include quantum technology engineers, machine learning and AI experts, heavy goods vehicle drivers, hospitality staff from business development professionals, market access specialists to biomaterial engineers and bioinformaticians. The one thing in common with all of these roles, though, was that they were looking for individuals who had sector-specific knowledge. The important thing to note was that they were looking for individuals who were talented individuals and looking at the caliber of the individuals rather than which country they were coming from. But that being said, they did acknowledge that some countries had more wider pools than other countries. Like when it came to electrical engineers, the US and India had much wider pools of highly skilled individuals in this area. Now let's talk about what this visa includes. Now, as a part of this visa, you are allowed to move to the UK and do an eligible job for a fast-growing company. Now, what makes this route excessively brilliant is the fact that while you've been sponsored for this visa, you only need to stay with the company that is sponsoring you for 6 months, and beyond that, what you do is entirely up to you. If at 6 months you decide that you really like your job, of course you can continue working for them up to 2 years and then see what you want to do. Or what you can do is stop your job, change your job, do voluntary work, or even start a business entirely on your own. The visa is valid for 2 years, and beyond that you can increase it by 3 years as many times as you'd like. But after 5 years you can obviously apply for an ILR with this visa, and this visa also allows you to bring your dependents along, which is your partner and your children. Now, because this visa is so hot, I do suggest you don't waste any time. You absolutely step on it and get in touch with these companies as soon as possible. Let's talk about which companies can actually be categorized as scale-up companies. In order to be categorized as a scale-up company or an eligible fast-growing company, the company must have an annualized growth of at least 20% for the previous 3-year period in terms of turnover or staffing. It should also have a minimum of 10 employees at the start of this 3-year period. And it should be listed as A-rated on the Home Office's register of licensed sponsors. Now, before I go ahead, don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, and click on the bell icon for notifications. Now, in terms of the pros, the scale-up visa does allow you to apply for an ILR after 5 years, but at a much cheaper rate than the skilled worker visa. But that's not all. The challenge with this visa is that only a few number of companies are actually eligible and meet the criteria set by the government to be classified as scale-up businesses. The other challenge that comes with this visa is that there are high costs associated with getting the license and sponsoring visas for this category. And the problem is that the employees that come on this visa are tied in for only 6 months, which means that a lot of businesses are then worried about retention. Let's talk about the eligibility. There are some very specific requirements when it comes to this visa. First off, you should have a confirmed job offer to work for an approved scale-up business for at least 6 months. You must also have a valid certificate of sponsorship issued by your UK sponsor for the job you're planning to do. You must also have a job offer to do a job that's on the list of eligible occupations. You should also be paid a minimum salary in your new job which is equal to or exceeds £33,000 a year or £10.58 per hour and the going rate for the job. Now, every job has its own annual going rate. So if you want to find out the rate for a particular job, visit this link. You should also be 18 years and over. You should be competent in the English language. You should have enough money to support yourself without relying on public funds. And you should have a valid TB certificate if required. Let's talk about how much this is going to cost you. The application fees are £715 per person. The health surcharge for this visa is £624 per person. In terms of money you need to support yourself, you will need £1,270. You must have the money available for at least 28 days in a row in your accounts. The day 28 must be within 31 days of applying for this visa. Now, if you have dependents coming along, it will be an additional £285 for your partner, £315 for one child, and £200 for an additional child. In terms of the documents you'll need, you will need a certificate of sponsorship reference number, which will be mentioned on your COS. You would need proof of your knowledge of English, which will be your English language test or the ECCTIS certification. You'd need a valid passport, your job title and annual salary, your job's occupation code, the name of your employer, and their sponsor license number, which will be again mentioned on your COS. Proof of funds in terms of bank statements or any other proof. Proof of relationship with your dependents, which could be marriage certificates or birth certificates. A TB test if you are from a listed country. If you'd like to know if you are from a listed country, visit this link. An ATAS certificate if you are researching a sensitive subject at a PhD level or higher, a blank page in your passport, and translation if your documents are not in English. To apply for this visa, you'll need to apply online, and at some point you'll either have to go to a visa application center to have your biometrics taken, or use the UK Immigration ID Check app to scan your identity documents. Once you've applied, it usually takes 3 weeks to receive a decision. In some cases, you might have expedited services available in your country, so it's worth checking. Now, one challenge you're bound to face if you live in the UK and if you try shooting anything is the changing light. I usually use only daylight to shoot all of my videos, and as a consequence of that, the light is constantly shifting and I have to stop and pause and change all of the settings. But I think I just got lucky because Newer actually sent me a bunch of lights to test, and because of that, today's video is a whole lot better because I'm using these lights right now and they have completely changed my whole way of shooting, and I don't need to rely only on the daylight anymore because I have these two and they are doing a phenomenal job. So if you are looking for lights and if you do want to start your own YouTube channel or shoot, or even for those Zoom calls where you feel you haven't been getting enough light and you look like you're sitting in a dark room, I definitely suggest you check out these lights, and you probably pick them up if you really like them, and I'm going to leave the links in the description below. So how do you know which companies are scale-up companies? If you download the list of licensed sponsors from the government website, which is what I did today as of this day while making this video, and you actually search for scale-up visas, there is quite literally only one company that is listed that has a scale-up visa active at this point. The company is Tennessine Limited and has listed Azumi as its website. Now, Azumi is a children's entertainment channel. This is the only scale-up company that currently holds a license for a scale-up visa. This possibly means that the others have filed paperwork, but it hasn't come through yet, because typically getting a license for a visa in the UK takes quite some time. Now, I could sit and wait around and wait for the updated list for this as and when the companies get their licenses, or I could find out which all companies have been listed as scale-up companies right now and start applying to them or getting to know more about them by either going to their careers section or looking for openings from these companies. Now, one way to do this is to visit the Scale Up Institute website, where they have actually divided all the scale-ups in the country basis their location. So there's a list of Scotland, England, Ireland, and Wales. All you need to do is click on this and it'll give you an entire deep dive of all of the scale-up companies that have been listed under each of these specific segments. Now, because this visa is so hot, I do suggest you don't waste any time. You absolutely step on it and get in touch with these companies as soon as possible. Now, if you do plan on moving to the UK using this visa, you'll need to know whether the £33,000, which is the base salary for this visa, is sufficient and if it's going to help you manage all your expenses, or if you're going to need more. What you'll honestly need is an idea of what your living expenses in the UK are going to be like. There's a simple way of finding that out because I have done an entire video on the cost of living expenses in the UK. So all you need to do is click this.